6 of my very own fairy stories by Johnny Gruelle. Granny Hawkins. One day Danny walked over to see Granny Hawkins. Granny lived all alone in a little cottage, and very few people went to see her because she was so very poor. Danny enjoyed going there, for Granny always had a few cookies hidden away in a jar, and could tell the most delightful fairy tales, so Danny was always sure of a welcome and a pleasant time. This day, however, Granny Hawkins was feeling poorly, and could not even leave her armchair to greet him at the door. But her voice was cheery when she called for him to come in, and her smile of welcome was just as pleasant as if she had been in the best of health.
"I guess I am getting old," said Granny Hawkins, "and that is what is the matter with me. I have not cleaned the house for weeks."
Danny said he would get the broom and sweep the floor for Granny, but she told him to pull a stool up near the fire and she would tell him a story. Granny had just started one of her beautiful fairy tales when there was a knock at the door and a little gnome walked in. Both Granny Hawkins and Danny were very much surprised to see a real live gnome, but he walked right up to them at the fireplace. "I heard you say you were getting too old to do any work," said the gnome, "so I thought I would come and help you." He pulled a tiny whistle from his pocket and blew upon it. The old broom behind the door slid out and began sweeping. The pail went out to the well and filled itself with water and came sliding in, followed by a scrubbing brush and a cake of soap. The dust rag hanging behind the kitchen sink came flying in and began dusting the furniture. As the broom swept the floor, the scrubbing brush dipped itself in the pail of water, ran its bristles over the soap, and scrubbed the floor and woodwork. When the old house had been gone over in this manner, the little gnome whistled again, and the scrubbing brush, the pail of water, cake of soap, and the broom went back to their original places, and rolls of wallpaper came rolling into the room and spread themselves on the floor. Danny and Granny Hawkins gazed open-mouthed with astonishment, for in answer to another whistle, a pair of shears walked into the room and cut the wallpaper to fit, and a dish of paste and a paste-brush slid into the room. The paste-brush dipped itself into the paste and pasted the back of the paper. Then the paper slid up on the wall, as neat as a paper-hanger could place it. Then the little gnome waved his hand towards Granny Hawkins, and Danny saw she was changed to a little girl of his own age. She had on a very quaint little dress and poke bonnet, and as she looked around her wonderingly, she caught sight of the gnome and ran to him and threw her arms about him. "We will have a tea party," she said. "Yes," agreed the little gnome, "just as we did years and years ago, for," he said as he turned to Danny, "Granny Hawkins and I were very dear friends when she was a little girl." Then Granny Hawkins set the table, and they all sat down. The little gnome whistled again, and all the dishes sprang from the cupboard and placed themselves before the three friends. There were many good things to eat, and they had a delightful tea party. "Why is it," asked Granny of the little gnome, "that I have not seen you for so many years?" "It is because," he answered, "that you did not keep your heart entirely young. I was forgotten as you grew out of childhood. Those who forget the good things they knew as children soon grow old, in mind as well as in body. If you really wish to remain as you are," said the gnome, "you must never forget the friends of your childhood. If you wish, I will take you back to the land of childhood, where you will always remain as you are now, and meet your friends of years ago as they were then." Of course, Granny was delighted to hear this, so she kissed Danny good-bye, and the little gnome shook his hand, and they left the house together. Danny watched them until they disappeared down the path towards the river. Then he went home. The neighbours never knew where Granny went to, and Danny told his mother of his adventure and told her that he would always remember what the little gnome had told Granny about always keeping young. End of section 6.